Ncrp Productions presents the Fireside Chat series. Well, welcome back to another Fireside Chat. It's been a little while for us. This is Barry.
And this is Pedro.
And we're back together kind of with no direction, but I've been told over and over again by people that they like our no direction stuff. So
I mean, it works out sometimes.
So it's been about a month maybe since we last did it, and the last time we did it, we were very directed on the Shadowrun game, which is going well. We're dropping our 5th episode this weekend.
That's right.
Actually, tomorrow. We're currently recording Thursday. Tomorrow we are going to be dropping episode 21 of Unhallowed Metropolis.
Right. Oh, man.
And I thought about it, and one of the things I was thinking about is when you sit down to play, I was talking with Dave, our Shadowrun game master, earlier today, and I was saying, what do you sit down and play? How do you focus for the time that you're going to sit down and play? He was asking me, I was looking at doing a one-shot, and he said, can you do a one-shot? We have a friend of ours who can't do one-shots. And I said to him, I really don't know. It's been a long time since I sat down and thought, I'm going to run 1, 2, maybe 3 episodes and walk away from it. One of the terrible things for me when I was writing short stories, not that anything ever got published or anything like that, but when I was writing them, I couldn't keep a short story short because I couldn't end it.
I mean, most of the games we end up playing, even if we start, even before the podcast, we would start and be like, oh, well, this is actually super fun. Let's just continue.
Right. I mean, Dishonored, Michael honestly went into Dishonored thinking that it was going to be 3 or 4 episodes. I think you and I thought maybe 5.
Yeah, most.
We had 14 and we finished one section of 4. Yeah. Or 2 sections of 4, I think.
I still think if you can do that in a one-shot, that whole thing, man, more power to you. I don't know how you're going to have fun doing it, but
I tell you, I don't know that you can unless you have kind of a drag-along group. I've been talking with a number of people about podcasts. No aspersions, just saying that for the way I run and what I enjoy listening as far as a podcast, I have seen a lot of podcasts that I'm not happy with. I can't say the words not impressed because you know what? Kudos to everybody that's doing this. This is a lot of work. This is nerve-wracking to get it right. It's uncomfortable to think, is my voice going to be off? Am I going to say something wrong? Am I going to say something right? And extreme fame, that ain't ever going to happen for me, but
I mean, I feel like half the work, if not more, is just honestly the courage to get something out. Just do it. Just put it out there.
Right. So, no one else says it enough, but to everybody who's doing these podcasts, everybody who's getting their words out there, kudos. Seriously, This is a lot of work. People need to respect that more. It's easy to fall in line behind somebody that's done this professionally. There's a number of people that I listen to that are honestly professional, meaning they're paid for it. Well, that changes things a little bit, but bottom line, if you're getting paid for it, it's now a job and you have to work at it. But for most of the people, it's amateur. Mm-hmm. You're not getting paid. You're not getting anything for it except what? For you, Pedro, what are you getting out of doing Ncrp Productions?
Man, most of what I'm getting out, I mean, one, it's the fun in putting stuff out there and seeing people actually enjoying it.
Right.
One person that I know is one of my friends who's been listening. He started, 1 episode of Dishonored and then is like, oh yeah, every so-and-so day of the week I'm, listening. I spend the day listening and catching up. And he tells me about how much he's enjoying it. And I'm just like, wow. He's a good friend of mine, but it's also he's enjoying it, not just because, he's my friend. Because you can sometimes tell if somebody's like, oh, yeah, it's cool, it's fun.
Paying you lip service.
Yeah, but, just because he's a good friend of mine doesn't mean that I can't see that he's really enjoying it. And so that's part of it is, and seeing the numbers that we do have, even if somebody listens for 10 minutes, I'm sure it brought them a little entertainment. I mean, even some of the bad ones are entertaining for something.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, yeah, the thought that I'm, entertaining somebody is a good one. And ultimately, a large portion of it is one, I get to do something that I enjoy doing for the hopes of, it growing into something more. But at the end of the day, if all that happens is I have recordings of like me and my friends playing games, that's fun there. I was listening to one. I usually wait a while to listen to them so that I can kind of forget. But listening to Shadowrun episode 1, just like the fun we were having, and relearning the story and hearing all the things that you end up forgetting, the little things. So just even having that is super fun.
I have to agree. There are games that go back for me a lot of years, and I would love to have had them recorded just to be able to re-listen. Just being able to relive that time with people is worth it. Nice to hear that we've got somebody that's listening to every episode on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Didn't know we had any of those.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know. We're not getting feedback. That's a hint for everyone to start giving us feedback. But we're not getting any real feedback directly about problems. We're hearing people saying, we enjoyed this, we enjoyed that. But we're not hearing it on a regular basis, so we're kind of, blind as far as putting these things out. And the only thing we can rely on is us. This is honestly, when you sit down and listen to one of our podcasts, you are listening to us the way we play. We had one of our people, her mom had started listening and had told her, and she admitted to us, the mom had asked, are you guys produced? Are you guys scripted? Something that I've wondered with a number of the bigger podcasts. When you listen to us, I think it's wonderful that you think we're scripted. We're so far beyond scripted, it's hilarious.
Yep. If you could be a fly in the wall, you'd find it interesting. Or a fly in our brains.
There you go, fly in the brain. Yep, exactly. Now, it's a neat world to be a part of. I would love to see more people playing. Found out recently that we have a local game store in our area that is putting on our podcast because it's selling games for that store.
Oh, shoot.
I'll let you know it's not my store, which is fine because that's kind of exciting. Here I am, in theory, really in the gaming industry, you shouldn't be using the word competitor, because if you're really competing with other stores in your area, I think you're making a mistake. As far as the game store side of it, I have been doing this for over 35 years. And in all honesty, if I am directly competing, fighting, arguing, it's horrible. It's so uncomfortable and unproductive. It's so much better if I'm sending people to your store, you're sending people to another store, and we can fulfill everything that someone's looking for. If I don't have it all, I'd rather you get it than not get it and get frustrated and not play it.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
But to have somebody basically tell me that they're using our podcast to sell games, damn, that's fun.
Yep. That it's a good feeling. And I think that's a good key within that, is that this is supposed to be, it's a community.
It is a community.
If you haven't and you're listening to this, go check out the community on Twitter, Instagram, just somewhere. With the exceptions as always, it's an open, really good community, and I always love interacting on Twitter with just different channels. You always find something new, or even just, and I know how good it feels to get just one little comment, so I do my best to view people's content and just being like, oh shoot, that's really cool. Even something simple like that, or like, wow, you did that art really awesome. Just something like that feels great, and it builds the community, because then they can look at your stuff, and it's you just behave genuinely, which is definitely one thing that we have, I think, for our podcast, is that it's very genuine.
It's very genuine. Every mistake is really honestly there.
Yep.
For me, I'm basically a Luddite when it comes to this stuff. That's a big reason you and I talked about early on, that you were going to have to shoulder the load on things like Twitter and Instagram. I have the accounts. I sort of know what I'm doing. Don't really do a lot with it, but where I had learned to do it, again, being that Luddite, I want to be in person. Just today was dealing with one of my distributors for the store, and had said to the person there, I said, I don't want an email. I want to be able to talk to you. I think things get better done that way. I know that doesn't appear to be the millennial way to do things, but it's the way I was raised to do it, and it's a whole lot more comfortable for me. So for me, instead of Instagram and Twitter, and it's killing me right now in COVID time, what I miss is going to conventions. Mm-hmm. What I miss is the ability to go and meet people and talk to people and sit into interviews or panels where somebody talks about things, even if I get frustrated and leave, I'm feeling like I can put this story out there. I know there's going to be a lot of people. We may have millions of people that disagree with me, but Ed Greenwood, yep, I'm starting down that road. Ed Greenwood was at a convention many, many years ago. The year he first sold his desk of stuff to TSR, what would eventually become the Forgotten Realms. And he was in one of the panels, but he was not on the panel. We were there to listen to some fantastic people talk to us about getting your products out there. Ken Ralston, Larry Diatillo. I'm horrified I've forgotten the third person's name. And while they're talking and telling us what's going on, Ed continued to stand up and talk about himself. He would interrupt, or he'd ask a question that wasn't a question. And I'm going to tell you, it turned me off towards Forgotten Realms. It made it to where I had no desire to be a part of it. And then I ended up finding out more stuff and was even less interested in being a part of it. But that ability to be around people, to talk to people, to see how other people react to things, and to learn, I'm going to tell you what I got from that. I learned, keep your mouth shut if you don't have anything important to say. Although today, it's keep your mouth shut unless you have a podcast. Because even if what I'm saying now is unimportant, here it is on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the other thing. Like, people, what I'm seeing right now is people just kind of want to hear, and it's interesting because I'm seeing the social aspect of people, transferred into that digital age. Whereas, that storytelling mentality where instead of sitting around a fire telling stories, now we can sit on our couch and, listen to somebody's story, and, what might be boring to one person is super interesting to another. I mean, I've seen all kinds of, different role-playing game videos online, and even, stranger non-role-playing games that are just somebody talking about some innocuous part of their life, and it's like, well, that's interesting because it's something that I don't know about.
Absolutely.
And I also really like when I get to find somebody new who doesn't know anything about role-playing games, because I don't have my own statistics completely, but I feel like 9 times out of 10 when I've shown somebody role-playing games, they've jumped on it, or they've at least been entertained. Even my brother, who isn't very interested in this, he played once and still had a good time with me. Just sat through it. Never got him to play again, but he at least sat through it.
I don't know how anyone couldn't have a great time playing with you, Pedro. I'm just going to say that. That has been one of the things that's been around the table since you've been playing with us. Everybody has a good time playing with Pedro. No. But, sorry, I just had to throw a compliment in there.
Okay, well, you know what? I'll take that one then. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and
it is like we are on the goddamn freeway.
Yeah. Shoot, I had a place I was going, and then someone complimented me, and I forgot. Yeah. It's also nice of you to say, because at the time that I was playing that game, it was very, very young into my GMing experience. So
okay.
It was very much
early Pedro years.
Yeah,
the early
years.
Very
much what I thought was one room fight some monsters, another room fight monsters.
Sure. I think that is everyone's beginning. It seems like.
Yeah.
So I've got one of the topics for me today that I was looking at, because I was a part of it, and because, at least for our table and for my store, it's been a huge thing. Kickstarter, mm-hmm. which I have different feelings of Kickstarter being a player and a consumer, and also being a store owner. But those thrown aside, the Avatar Kickstarter closed today.
Oh, yeah, I've been following that.
September 2nd, it closed with $9.5 million gross earnings from the Kickstarter. So let me give you an idea of how that sits with games, because we've been talking, a lot of us have been talking for the last 2 weeks as we've watched this thing blow up. Frosthaven, #1 Kickstarter game, $13 million. Now that follows them doing Gloomhaven a couple of times. I don't remember how many times they did it. And each of the Gloomhavens going crazy. Although, of course, this one breaking all of them. The next one down was Kingdom Death Monster, 12.3 million. Approximately, these numbers are not exactly, but darn close. 12.3 million for Kingdom Death Monster, 1.5. Their first one did well, and they went back and did even more. Now, Frosthaven is a role-playing style dungeon delve or dungeon crawl board game. It's being done in the same style and by the same people that brought you Gloomhaven. Something where you can spend an extensive period of time playing, not really what we do in role-playing, but has close to the same feel.
I feel like every time I've played one of those games too, I'm like, I could just be role-playing.
And that's where I sit. I get asked all the time, you want to play a board game? And I think, yeah, I don't mind playing a board game, but I really want to play a role-playing game if we got that much time. Kingdom Death Monster is strictly a miniature battles game, had beautiful figures. That was 12.3. Our next two, 8.8 mil was a gaming table. It wasn't even games. It was what to play games on. It was a company that was doing, it was Wormwood, and they were doing coffee gaming tables. 8.8 million.
God, they're popular, but that's surprising.
Yep. Actually, for us, we don't play on a Wormwood. We do play on one of the tables made from Kickstarter, and they're wonderful. Can't argue that. 8.7, oh boy, lots of grousing either way on this one. Exploding Kittens.
Oh my god, that made that much?
Exploding Kittens, I had originally understood, was one of the biggest, and it was out before both Kingdom Death Monster and Frosthaven, so I think it actually was the biggest at one point. Yeah, $8.7 million for what was effectively a $20, in my mind, one-off. Sorry if everybody hates me for that, but not one of my favorite games. It did its job, and I feel like that one had a cheat. I feel like that one was being purchased by people that enjoyed the webcomic it was connected to. So, 8.7 Exploding Kittens, 8.8 the gaming table. This is coming from the internet, because I can actually use a computer a little bit, and this was as of July 2021. So, Avatar, role-playing game from Magpie Games. By the way, they do good stuff. They were the guys who originally had 7th Sea before it went to Chaosium. They've done a couple other games that I've backed. I'm waiting for their Root RPG, which is coming based on the very, very popular board game. 81,566 backers for a role-playing game. So, with those interesting numbers there, I got to ask you, what is your feeling? Do you think there are 81,566 people out there? Do you think that there are 81,566 people that are buying this product to run a role-playing game in the Avatar universe?
Gosh, I want to say yes.
Yes, I know you do.
Also,
because we love Avatar. I gotta let you know, this is a big Avatar love household.
I would say no, just because sometimes I'm a pessimist, but I think it's just so popular. I mean, like a good chunk of the reason I want it, not only to run it, is just for the lore itself.
Right.
Just all the books that, because I've read a ton of the comics. I've watched, Avatar, Last Airbender, and Legend of Korra.
I have them on DVD.
Yeah.
I've watched all of Airbender. Hate me if you will. I haven't yet watched Korra, but I have so many other things going on. But it's certainly on the top of the stack.
Yeah, and I mean, I could totally see a ton of people buying it just to have, like, Avatar-based merchandise. And also, some of those Kickstarter things are really cool.
Oh, I can't argue that.
So, yeah, but I know that when I get it, I am definitely going to do some running of it.
And we're hoping, as all the people here listening to the podcast are, that we're going to be running it on this podcast.
Yes.
So, with that in mind, 81,566, and that doesn't mean they're all buying one game. Ncrp, North Coast Role Playing, is a backer of the Kickstarter. We are in there as a retailer. We're not just buying one copy. So there's more than that. But I'd love to think that there's 81,566 people going to be running Avatar role-playing games. I don't think it's the case. What's interesting to me looking at that is if they're buying it for the lore, and I can tell you in the store, I sell the new Alien game when it's in stock. Free League Publishing and Modifius have been putting that game out now for roughly 2 years. I know for a fact that in my store I have sold a number of copies to people that don't and will never play role-playing games. But that kind of brings me over to the licensed project, and I feel like we kind of covered this topic before, but I'm going to come back to it just because it drives me crazy, and Avatar, with that kind of number, has to push me back to it. You get a licensed product as an RPG, and we already know the story that it's connected to. Most of them, I feel like it would be so difficult to run in those worlds. For me, and I'm closed-minded or short-sighted, I think Stargate would be fairly easy. Not that the show wasn't fantastic, loved the show, but I think that the general, what would you call it? The general structure of the shows is pretty straightforward. The group walks through the Stargate, they end up somewhere else, they realize something bad is happening, they fix it, they go back through the Stargate, close episode. I could run one of those, I think. Mm-hmm. But then you get to something like Avatar that has this huge overarching story. And one of the neat things with the game that they did is they have, as you well know, different era settings. Yes. As far as I know, in the shows, we've only seen the Aang era and the Korra era. If I read the Kickstarter correctly, there are 2 pre-Aang eras. There's a between Aang and Korra era, which I think is a war.
Yeah, let me see. Pre-Aang. No, there's not one in between.
So
Korra,
then there's 3 pre-Aang, Aang, Korra, and then is there one after as well?
Yes. So let me see. I'm gonna run through them just so I remember. Because so I've read the quick start rules. Love what they're doing. So you got Avatar, Avatar Roku, which is before, and that one is right up to the 100-Year War.
Okay.
That one, the description that they gave that one says if you want to do like the political kind of stuff.
Okay.
So that one, it says, political and trying to, mitigate the Fire Nation going into that war. And then so before that one is the Avatar Kyoshi era, which they described that one as like bandits and stuff like that. And then after
that's got to be the 100 Years War. That's the war I was thinking about.
Yes, 100-Year War. So then you got all the way from the beginning of that up to Aang, and then there's Aang's era, and then that's both. They describe that one as after he defeated the Fire Lord.
Okay.
And so they have some comics that kind of talk about what he does after that. So a lot of, reconstruction and dealing with the whole war and what that's done.
Okay.
And then you have Korra's era, which they describe as after the show, which I won't spoil the ending.
Please don't. I haven't watched it yet.
But at the end of the show, something big happens, which really opens up the era to the future.
And then that's it. There's currently only 5 eras.
Just the 5. I haven't looked at if they've added more on the Kickstarter yet. But yeah, out of those 5, I feel like you have a good amount of places you can kind of go, depending on, I guess what story you want to run.
Well, it sounds like they actually kind of went into it with the same concerns that I have when it comes to licensed products. So they have 3 eras before the show we've seen. So those are easy ones to run in. Babylon 5 tried that with the RPG. You were running on Babylon 4. You were still bookended into the story, but it was something different. Then you were saying that the Aang one actually was after the Aang show, and you said the Korra one was after. So they were smart. They probably looked at it, hey, they're reading my mind. They looked at it and said, we've got to do something so people can run in that game. Mm-hmm. So licensed products, when you approach a licensed product, do you generally have an idea ahead of time? Or do you do like me, you go, wow, yeah, I'm definitely going to run the Star Trek RPG and go buy all the parts to it, and then you get it and you go, whoa, this is not as easy as I thought.
Yeah, I mean, with licensed products like that, I agree sometimes I'm not entirely sure. Like, I remember seeing the, what's it called? The Game of Thrones game.
Oh yeah.
And I thought
Song of Ice and Fire. That's like, Green Ronin.
I was like, I don't know. There is stuff you can do, but I'm like, why for that one? Why wouldn't you want? You're going to be part of the Game of Thrones. It's going to change the story, and there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe I just don't want to deal with the hassle of changing that story.
Right.
But with something like this, I think the way they did it really does open it up. Because even during, I was thinking, the before ones, before the 100-Year War, perfectly easy. And then I was contemplating the 100-Year War, and I'm like, okay, well, if something happens, like if somebody, causes a big kerfuffle, or, somebody tries to find the Avatar before the show, what's the repercussions? And then I went to, it's actually perfect. The Fire Nation isn't going to want to let any information out. So even if somebody put up a rebellion near the start of it, they easily could squash that and try and, erase the information. They really, I was looking at the 100-Year War and what they do, and the decimation of like the Southern Water Tribe and just all the stuff they did, insane. Okay. And also I love the fact this is a kid's show.
Right. And we're going to be role-playing, and as role-playing, there's going to be plenty of us doing adult things.
Yeah, and so that's what I think is so great about the Avatar show and the lore, is that really, if you want to do that kids show, you really can do it. Like if you want to play a kids game or something, it's really easy just to play that. But then for those that are older and can really look past just the there's plenty of sadness in that, but look past the kid visage, or anyway, look past that, you can really see all of the adult ways you can run this game, with the war and with just the war in general, and just how people would react in a world where you can burst fire from your fist or lightning or whatever. It opens up a lot of avenues, and I could see where you might have the hang up of, what are you going to do? But I think if you just look past trying to go along with the story, I think it would always work out in the end, even if you tried to do something.
So if you decide to pick up a licensed product, do you generally go back and watch the show or read the books for products that you're going to try and run in?
Usually what I'll do, and I've done this with a couple things, like the Power Rangers game we've mentioned, or I had a friend who wanted me to run a Kingdom Hearts game.
Okay.
Which,
so you go back and play the video game?
No, I go to the wikis is what I do, and I look for the general story. I like to delve into a timeline, just get a general timeline of what's going on. And some are easier than others. Like the Power Rangers, the one that I ran, each of the players wanted to have a morphin from a different story.
I remember you saying that,
and
yes.
So I just went to the synopsis of each of those, stories, and was like, okay, so that's the synopsis. Oh, this character looks interesting. Follow his rabbit hole, and then just build something from that. I try not to absorb everything. Which was a difficulty when I tried to do the Kingdom Hearts one, because have you ever seen anything on Kingdom Hearts?
I know the video game. I have not read a wiki. Honestly, again, remember Luddite wasn't certain that there was a wiki for everything out there. That's great news.
There's basically a wiki for everything out there.
I love it.
Good God, I love the Kingdom Hearts games, but I would look at one thing and have to get a definition for 6 other things, and at least half of those things were super vague. And so that one, even 100 times more difficult. I haven't even started on that one yet. But yeah, most of the time I'll just go to like a wiki, or if I'm really feeling, if it's something easy to play, like I would play the video game of it. If there was a video game like Dishonored, I remember when we were playing that, I started playing the video game again just to kind of delve into that world.
Sure, okay.
But I also did a lot more of just looking on the wiki.
Okay.
So that's where I usually, because I can usually just skim through the information, absorb it, form a story, and then try and block out the rest.
Okay. We played Primeval with Ty, and the Primeval game, once he announced that he was going to do it, I immediately ran back and started watching the episodes. And it definitely gives you a feel for what's going on in the world, so you have to immerse yourself in that. And that one is a little bit different because you can go around the story that the shows have just simply because of the design of the show. You have anomalies that drop you into different time frames. Each of the time frames is its own timeline. If you hop off one timeline through an anomaly into another timeline, you may be the only person that knows it. So inherently, there is a way to run anything there and not have to worry about it.
I think some shows just lend a lot easier than others.
I agree with you. Something as narrow and incredible, no disrespect, but like Lord of the Rings. I bring that up anytime we talk licenses, and I think other than you shadowing the party, which actually, and I've forgotten which game, but one of the games out there for Lord of the Rings, you do play characters that effectively shadow the Fellowship the whole way. They're going here, you're just behind them, or you're just to the left of them by a country. Mm-hmm. So we started this with a little bit with me talking about running short-run games and long-run games, and we got off topic, which I'm good with. I enjoy that. But let me go back to, when you sit down to play, do you ever really sit down to play an actual one-shot?
I don't think I've ever really played in a one shot that someone's like, this is going to be a one.
I mean, you as a game master, yeah.
As a game master.
In a lot of this, I'm looking at the two of us both game mastering quite a bit for different people, different groups, even people that we walk in blind. I used to run at the Fantasy Gamers Guild. You've done it at a couple of our local conventions here where you've run for people. You're also running at our monthly. So what I'm saying is, when you go in, do you ever go in thinking, I'm going to run a one-shot? I have set this up to be a one and done, come in, play, go away.
With my own ideas? No.
Okay.
I have tried, I think, to make one-shots, but every time I have a problem constraining, because a lot of times when I get into the game...
Sure.
I don't want to rush people.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes I wonder if it's to the detriment of the game or not. But, like, sometimes people are just, they're riffing on things. They're having these interesting moments. And I've seen some players who are more combat-oriented, they might look a little bored. But when I'm learning more and more as I play, I enjoy combat less. I don't hate it, but I guess the system depends, too.
Combat's a vehicle.
Yeah.
Combat gets you where you're going, but even in things like, look at the Shadowrun game. That is a very combat heavy. In previous games where I've played, combat is a major portion of it. We have combat in this game, but I would not suggest that it's more than 30% of what we do. So
when I go in to run a game, the few times I've done it, I've actually run a one-shot. They've been modules that have been, one-shots. But I've taken one-shot modules, much like Dishonored was supposed to be, and they just have kept going, or they haven't got to the very end. And I'm like, well, I don't want to just rush to the end and say, oh, this is how it resolves.
All right, so folks, we're going to have Pedro say it. Say, no, I do not ever sit down and run a one-shot. There we go. The admit is there.
My name is Pedro, and no, I never sit down and do a one-shot.
Hi, Pedro. So on my side, that's what I was going to tell you. For me, I've never sat down to play. I've never sat down with the intention of running a one-shot, even when I've been told this is what you're going to do. So when you sit down to run not a one-shot, which is what we do, we've just admitted to that. Do you sit down with the intention of running a campaign, where I think a campaign is a long-running thing, no necessary end to it, with the idea being that you're going to go forward, maybe you take a break, but you keep coming back to it? Do you think about your games in that term, or have you ever thought about your games as in, I have not one shot, but one story I'm going to run?
Honestly, a lot of the times I'm going to sit down and I might have an idea of who the final boss is, or who's the big bad or something, but it's very rare that I've sat down and been like, no, this is going to be a closed-end campaign. Part of that is also because, and I'm sure anybody who's been a GM has seen this, it's very hard to keep players together and keep going. Life is, if you're not a high schooler with a lot more extra time, you're working, you got kids, keeping a game going is gosh darn hard. So a lot of times I'll just start a game and I have a general idea and we just go, because I almost go into it thinking we might not finish this.
Okay.
So let's play, see where the story goes, and just go with it.
Okay.
Because I find that, also, if you play that way, I found a chunk of times you'll learn what is the requirement for players to feel fulfilled, to like finish their story, and then you're like,
Sure.
oh, okay, I could now do that in X amount of games, or like, then you'll get a couple of them and you're like, oh, okay, I can combine these together and now I see an endpoint. Let's see if we can get there in a non-rushy way.
Okay.
So it's rare that I go in with a complete plan.
For me, Unhallowed is a definite one of those. When I started looking at it, again, never had any plan that I was going to end per se. I don't even know if I had a story end. I just kind of liked the fact that the players played so well together, the characters were built so well, and that, by the way, has nothing to do with me. And the story went forward, again, very little to do with me, with the players. And we've just kept moving and moving forward. Now that we're doing the podcast and we are in our... Again, for Unhallowed Metropolis, we're calling it second season, but really, if you want to knock it out, it's probably third season. Dino's my first, and then now. But it's even going to be more than that, because I've started laying out where do we want to go next. We've got Secrets in the Sands. That is not a closed story, but that's a chapter, which is probably what it's going to be for us. And I've already been building the next parts. Do you find yourself doing that when you've got a game, you've been running the game for a while, everyone still seems to be interested? Do you start looking at where am I going to take them next, even though you're not done with this one, even though potentially it's months before you're going to be done with the current story? Do you start looking at the next step?
I think it's rare that I end up actively looking at it, but a lot of times, and I have this problem, and anybody with ADHD would know that they have this problem too, I think up a lot more stories than I have time to play, and often I'll be in one game, and then afterwards I'll think, oh, this is cool, that's where that's going to go, and then I'll just start thinking about another game, like, oh, that's really cool, what if you spun it like this? And then maybe like a week later I'll be like, okay, let's think about this game, and then I'll kind of see little offshoots, follow those, and then get distracted about something else.
I feel like that's not ADHD. I feel like that's insulting the ADHD people. I think that is called creativity.
Yeah, there's probably a lot.
Because I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I do the same thing. You get moving on something, and suddenly you're like, oh God, oh God, oh God. And for me, if I don't write it down, I lose it. And I know for a fact I've lost 100,000 good ideas for the 3 or 4 crappy ones I wrote down.
I have a specific spot in my office that has a stack of multi-sized note cards, scraps of paper, a couple paper plates too.
Oh, wow.
Of
Okay.
just notes, and more notebooks than I will ever need, of just random notes. Everything from, several notepads of one story to just little like, this would be cool, or like little taglines for stories. And I haven't looked at some of them in years.
Well, let me tell you, from the Ed Greenwood school of how you do things to get them published, apparently that's what you do. Because apparently what he did was wrote stuff everywhere and then crammed it into a desk and then sold the desk to TSR. Well, on that note, Pedro, I think we can close this one off.
Yeah.
I don't know if we got anywhere, but I think we had fun getting there.
I think there was some stuff in there. I'm not sure. We'll you guys tell us if
Absolutely.
it was
Get back to us on this. Let us know what we did wrong, and maybe someone there tell us we did something right.
Yeah, please.
So, Pedro, until next time, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you, Barry.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for listening to another Ncrp Productions podcast. To stay on top of everything we're doing, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and like us on Facebook, all at Ncrp Productions. You can show your support and help us continue to produce content by joining our Patreon. We offer additional podcasts like our B-Sides, and have GM materials, maps, and other fun things you can discover over time. You can find our podcasts on YouTube, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google, and many other fine podcast sites. Just look for us at Ncrp Productions. We value your thoughts, so please don't hesitate to leave us feedback or comments. And if you would like to contact us directly, you can email us at ncrpproductions@gmail.com.